call the meeting.
Yeah, we just have to, Mr. Chairman, we'd have to let everybody filter in. It might take a second to
Sure.
load all that in.
Lou, if my other meeting is over, would you like me to come back to this meeting?
Please.
Okay. All right, I'm not sure, but it might be over by 8:30. So if you're still slogging away, I will rejoin.
Okay, and any questions you have while Jessica's making her presentation, why don't you make sure you get them in before you have to leave?
Okay, thank you.
And Lou, hi, it's Anna. I'm here. I just may not be able to be on video as much as usual.
Not a problem.
Yeah, Anna, if we forget you, just remember to remind us sometimes, but I don't see for like any kind of roll call or vote or anything.
Sure.
Like to start with a roll call. It looks like we've kind of topped out a little bit at the moment.
Right. It looks like it. If it's going to move this slowly, why don't we go ahead with the roll call?
Sure. So I'll start before I forget with Mr. Batchnik,
Here.
Mr. Williams,
Present.
Mr. Cantor,
Here.
Ms. Wells,
Here.
Mr. Mushak,
Here.
Mr. Pachis, and Ms. Langalis,
Here.
and Mr. Schulman, unless I missed somebody.
Here.
Okay, do you have a quorum?
All right. Steve, do you want to speak about the translation available?
Sure. So if there is anyone who needs Spanish translation, we do have that available. I'm sorry, I forgot who the translator's name is. If you want to pop on and give us any instructions on that, and then before we turn it over back to the chairman.
Hola a todos, buenas tardes. Recuerden que tienen la interpretación disponible, entonces se pueden conectar por allí. Deberían de tener un mundo, el dibujo de un globo que les permite ir al español.
Perfect. All right, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. For those who may not be able to see the list, in addition to commission members, there are about 128 participants attending the meeting currently. Welcome to our introduction to the new draft zoning regulations. Why are we here? The POCD, the city's plan of development, of conservation and development, which was completed in 2019, lists as an immediate implementation strategy and as the first item, a rewrite and modernization of the zoning code to achieve the plan's goals. This has led the Planning and Zoning Commission to hire a consultant to assist in that process. And this evening will be the first presentation of the draft regulations. The document we'll be discussing, again, is in response to the recommendations of the POCD. This is the first complete rewrite of the zoning regulations since they were adopted on October 16th, 1929. So it has been almost 100 years since the zoning regulations under which we operate were first adopted. Now, there have been intermediate changes. There was a more significant change, a series of changes made in 2016, but this is the first time that we've taken on all of the zoning regulations. Let me say, in recognition of the importance of these new regulations, the mayor wished he could be here. However, unfortunately, we scheduled this meeting at a time when he's out of the city on a well-deserved vacation. I want to stress, this is not a public hearing. There will be many public hearings and public meetings regarding these regulations, and what we believe will be ample opportunity for input from anyone who wants to comment on them. These, of course, will follow over the coming months, extending at least into late May and June, and longer still if the commission is not persuaded that all of the questions have been answered, and we have a document that we all can agree upon. But tonight is an opportunity for the public to hear about the new draft regulations from our consultant, Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative, also known as TPUDC, and also to a more limited degree to hear from the staff regarding these proposed regulations. We will be accepting questions this evening. However, again, this not being a public hearing, we want you to limit your questions to a minute or less, just a brief comment or a brief question that can be easily responded to by either the staff or the consultants. That holds for commission members as well. It also will give us an opportunity to hear from as many people as possible. As I've said before, this is an introduction only this evening. There'll be an ample opportunity for further public comment as the process moves forward over the coming months. An extensive outreach program has already been outlined. This month alone, in addition to tonight's introduction of the draft plan on April 12th, there will be a presentation of the draft zoning map. And on either April 20th, 24th, or 25th, the Planning and Zoning Commission will have its second meeting with the public, TPUDC, and our peer review attorney to have questions answered. There will also be council district meetings, neighborhood group meetings, and commission and process meetings. Again, no date for the adoption of the regulations or the map has yet been set, but it is not likely to occur in the immediate future. So let me begin by inviting Jessica Wilson from TPUDC to give an overview. Jessica?
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through a presentation for you all. Let me. Okay, can you all see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you all for being here this evening. We're really excited to go through this presentation on the public draft for you all. First, we're going to start out going through kind of where we've been in the process. And then, as was mentioned, this presentation is really to provide an overview of the regulations so that when the document is released after this presentation, you all will have already kind of an idea of what you can find in it. So first of all, some introductions. So I'm Jessica Wilson. I'm a project director with TPUDC, and we also have next to me Bill Wright. He is our director of coding, and then Principal Brian Wright, who wasn't able to join this evening, but he's been very involved in this project as well. A little bit about the process where we've been. We've reviewed existing documents. We went through the existing regulations that are, as was mentioned, almost 100 years old. So a lot of interesting things in them. Reviewed the POCD and the evaluations and recommendations report. We've had conversations, interviews with staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission members, the mayor, and a neighborhood association leaders about issues with the current regulations and goals for the new regulations. We conducted a tour of Norwalk with staff as our guide. There's been opportunities for engagement with the public. We've conducted synoptic surveys to inform new metrics. That's where we really went out into the community and measured areas to see what new metrics should be. We've analyzed how the new regulations can address goals, translated the existing zoning districts into new community districts, and we created the client draft regulations with that staff and legal have both reviewed. And then we made updates, and that's where we're at now with this public draft. A little bit about what opportunities for engagement we've had. The zonenorwalk.com project website was launched in July 2021. There are discussion forums, a mapping workshop, and video recordings up. If you haven't been there, really recommend that you kind of visit the website if you want to see where we've been at through the process. We had a community kickoff presentation also in July 2021. And then our big virtual charrette in September. And that had opening presentation, focus meetings, an open studio, and work in progress presentation. Through all that, here's some images of those meetings. In 2021, it was all virtual too. So we had opening presentation, as I mentioned, and then focus meetings on things such as character and development and streets and connectivity. We got a lot of good conversations and got a lot of good information from these meetings. On the website, there is a mapping workshop where people have placed dots for things that they like, things that they don't like, or areas for opportunity. There's also an area for website forums where people could submit ideas, thoughts, and questions. And then all of the videos from previous presentations are up on the website as well for you to watch if you missed any meetings. So as I mentioned, we've got a lot of good information from these public meetings. These are some of the things that we heard. We want a greater variety of housing types, such as allowing for multifamily and ADUs that fit in with the character of other neighborhoods. Affordable housing is very important. So is wanting to maintain the marine character and that views to the water are important. Protecting natural resources and the coastline. Green infrastructure is very important, such as pervious pavement, solar, green roofs, sustainable stormwater. Tree canopy is important. Wanting to protect the historic character and also protect some industrial, but looking at other locations for it. The need to address contractor yards. Walkability is important, and so is managing all modes of transportation. Streamlining and making the zoning easier to understand. Looking into parking standards such as shared parking and wanting a form-based code. So why update the code? As was mentioned, it's almost 100 years old, and also it needs to address the POCD goals and what we've heard throughout the process. In these next two slides, I'm going to go through again what some of the goals were and what we heard and where in the document these items can be addressed. So such as protecting the historic and marine character and views of the water important. So that's really the purpose of the document with these new community zoning districts. having water-specific districts and reference to the historic district. And then in Article 2, there's also what we call special requirements, and one of which is for scenic view corridors that can be added to the zoning map. Promoting a diverse housing type in urban core and at transit-oriented locations. This can be found in Article 4, which provides a greater diversity of housing types within the community districts, using different building types and uses, and then in updated ADU standards as well. Making land use decisions that support walking, biking, transit use, looking into parking standards, and addressing parking in the front setback. So this in Article 4, there are updated parking location and screening standards and parking requirements. There are new provisions for shared parking and bike parking, parking reductions near transit stops, and parking exemptions for Washington and Wall Street areas. Also in Article 4, within the CD3 districts, there's going to be parking and front setback standards for existing. For industrial, need to address the contractor yards and making it consistent with the industrial study. So industrial uses and standards have been updated based on the industrial zone study. Balancing environmental protection, water dependent uses, public access, and protecting natural resources in the coastline. So in Article 4, there's a new civic zone and specific waterfront community districts. Also in Article 5, there are civic space types, and I'll get into those a little more later. Article 6 has sustainability provisions for wind, solar, natural drainage, and shading. And it also has the coastal zone and flood zone requirements. And then some general document goals, which were to use more graphics to explain the concepts and make it easier to understand. This is really throughout the document that we use graphics in Article 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. And we'll go through all these articles too. And then also all the community zoning district standards and uses are in tables for ease of use. So your new regulations are what we call a hybrid community-based regulations. So they took the revised existing regulations and we added new community-based elements. And we're using the term community-based rather than form-based, but it's essentially kind of the same thing where they focus on the physical character of the community rather than just separating uses. This will create more predictable outcomes by having standards that address the built environment. Now I'm going to go through what these new community districts are, and these will be your new zoning districts. So the first step in our process was to look at what your old districts were and do a zoning translation to simplify and consolidate what the existing districts were, because you guys had 30 existing zoning districts, which is a lot. And we translated them to community districts. So each zone is really based on the character of an area. And you'll see that the village districts are now overlay districts to help to simplify. Next step was looking at updating metrics. And to do this, we looked at both the existing districts, synoptic surveys, and best practices. So we use this diagram here illustrates kind of the conceptual framework that we work within. In the CD1 and CD2 areas, there's a lot of open space and very little development. And as you know, Norwalk is really built out, so you don't have any CD1 or CD2 areas. Starting with CD3, these are your suburban areas. These are larger buildings that are set back from the street on larger lots, like a lot of the older neighborhoods are. In CD4, these are smaller houses. You start to get more of a mix of residential building types, such as row houses and small multifamily, and maybe some smaller commercial like a corner store. Then CD5 is your urban center or your downtown area. And special districts or SDs are reserved for things that don't really fit neatly in with one of the community districts, such as industrial areas. Now to go through your new districts. So CD3L, which is your suburban large lot with a village district overlay. This is primarily your existing AAA, your A, and the Silvermine Tavern Village District. The CD3S, your suburban single family district. This is some of your AA, your A, and your B residential districts. the CD3 suburban single and 2-family district. This is primarily your B and your C. And for these CD3 districts, a lot of the metrics and everything was brought forward from your existing. For CD4 general urban district with village district overlays, this was primarily your residential D, neighborhood business, your East Norwalk Village TOD zone, and the East Avenue Village District. Your CD4W, this is one of the water specific districts that I mentioned. And this has a village district overlay as well. This was the Rowayton Avenue Village District. Your CD4C general urban corridor. And these are for areas where you can permit a larger big box kind of store, but also trying to improve the character along the street, such as along your Route 1 corridor. These would be the Business 1 and Business 2 districts. The CD5 urban center with village district overlays. These were primarily the Washington Street Design District, the Reed Putnam Design District, your CBD, the Sono Station Design District, South Norwalk Business District, Executive Office, and the Merit 7 property. Your CD5W, your Urban Center Water, and this was your CBDW district. And then, as I mentioned, there were different special districts for areas that didn't really fit neatly into the commercial, such as the light industrial and heavy industrial districts, which were updated based on the industrial zone study, the marine commercial district, which was updated based on the waterfront study, and then a hospital district and your island conservation district. And then also we created a new civic district for parks, open spaces, and civic buildings. Currently, all of these spaces are just within one of your other districts, but it helps to have them kind of separated out as their own district. So now to provide an overview of the regulations. So the regulations are going to include these 9 articles, and I'm going to go through each one and some examples of them from the regulations. So Article 1 is really your general kind of housekeeping article. It includes the purpose of the code, nonconformity provisions, transition provisions, applicability of the regulations, and the relationship to other regulations. Article 2 is your zoning map. So this will include any kind of provision specific to the zoning map. Article 3 is an introduction to the different districts, such as introducing the different community districts, the different overlays, such as the village district overlay, and other districts, such as redevelopment districts and the historic district. Article 4 is the largest article by far, and it includes all the building and lot standards. So this will probably be the one that you use the most. First, I want to introduce one concept that you'll see throughout Article 4, and that's the concept of yards. This is really a way to help organize the site to note where certain things are permitted or not permitted. So you'll have your front yard, your side yard, and your rear yard, and you'll see throughout the code that different items are permitted in different yards. And this diagram and this explanation is within the code as well. So looking at community district standards are provided. This is an example of the CD4 district, and they're provided in easy to use tables with different illustrations. Each community district will have their own set of tables. The diagrams show different lot types, including both corner lots and interior lots. For corner lots, there are both a principal frontage and a secondary frontage with standards for each. And then setbacks are provided in a table for both your principal frontage, your secondary frontage, side setbacks, and rear setbacks, both for your principal building and accessory buildings. So this next page continues with other lot and building site standards. We've got civic space types and block size, which are only applicable to development parcels. And that'll be in Article 5 that we'll go through. And then you have your private frontage types that are in a table here. And then a reference to where you can find your permitted uses, density for residential, and then your number of principal or accessory buildings that would be allowed on the lot. The next page then starts the building standards. So these include standards for building height and then your different facade standards. So building standards then continue with standards for roof types and building materials. There is a chart for the building types that would be allowed and also a reference to where you can find more information on the building types. Then continue into vehicular parking requirements, such as parking location and where garage and location and design can be. Then the next page continues with vehicular parking and bicycle parking reference, and then loading and access standards. And then we go into non-building components. So this is where your HVAC could be, and this also introduces the concept of the yard. There's references in all the tables for where the signage and lighting standards can be found. And then we go into private landscaping and fencing standards. And then the section ends with screen, street screen, and buffering standards. And then a reference to where additional standards for overlays or other districts can be found. If there are village district overlays within that community district, those standards will be found at the end of that chapter of those tables. So as I mentioned, so private frontage types is one concept that we use. And this helps to show how buildings can address the street. Within each character district, it'll have a table that shows permitted or not permitted frontage types. And then you can go to that section to learn more about what those frontage types are with some example images. Then also introduce the concept of building types. So building types, there'll be some standards within the building types that'll refer back to the community district tables. And then there'll be some standards that further regulate, such as height or width too as well. So currently, you don't have a use table. I know they're all just kind of listed out. So we try to give you all a very easy to use table. So you'll have your
Jessica, you're breaking up.
Sorry. Let's see. Uh-oh, this is my internet. Can you hear me a little bit better now? Is it back?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, I got a notice that said internet connection unstable there for a second. Hopefully that won't happen again. PL uses are uses with limitations, as I was saying. They have specific conditions that would apply to them, and those are listed as text provisions that are arranged alphabetically at the end of the tables. There are SPU uses, which are uses that require a special permit. And then PL1 uses, which are uses that have limitations and require a special permit. Encroachments are also provided in an easy to use table and organized by if it's permitted to encroach in the front, side, or rear setback areas. Parking provisions, as I mentioned, we've got parking reductions near mass transit facilities. There's a shared parking factor table with text provisions that go along with that. And then all of your parking, all of your parking requirements are listed by use within a table as well. So next into Article 5. So these are what we call development parcel standards. So development parcels are a larger site that requires more additional standards. So these are sites over 7.5 acres or sites that have a new road being put in. One of the things that is required with a development parcel of 7.5 acres or more is to add in these civic space types. And there's provisions in the code of what % of civic space is required. You can have parks, greens, pocket parks, squares, plazas, community gardens, playgrounds, or sport fields or courts. And each one has different kind of specifications or typical facilities that go along with it. And it has a list of what community district it would be permitted in. Article 6 is your citywide standards. So these go through where you'll find your flood hazard zone overlay standards, your coastal area management overlay standards, your sustainability provisions, and your workforce housing provisions as well. Article 7 is signage. So each of the signage pages has a graphic that shows what it would look like. It lists the permitted districts here, and then it goes into different dimension standards. And then it also has additional standards if those are applicable to the sign. And these two are meant for really being community character based, as well as more pedestrian friendly signage. Article 8 goes through the administration procedures and enforcement provisions and provides flowcharts for certain procedures or processes. And then the document concludes with Article 9 definitions. So these are organized alphabetically with graphics to help illustrate concepts. And when you're going through the code, anytime a word is capitalized, it'll mean it is defined. So you'll know then if you see a capitalized word to go to the definition section if you need that. So I know that was a quick trip through the code, but really the purpose was to really provide kind of an overview and give you guys a starting spot for reviewing of it. Looking at next steps. So this is always kind of our recommendation of how to review the code. We always recommend that really first you go through with empty hands so that you can get an idea of how things are laid out before marking it up. Then going through with a highlighter, then going through with a pencil, and then finally going through with your red pen to make your comments. So as I mentioned, this public draft and this presentation will be available for review at zonenorwalk.com. And then I'm going to turn it over to Steve now too to go through some of the next steps that staff is planning to do.
Sure. And Mr. Chairman, if you want to take a pause here and ask, have the commission ask questions too, I can wait because I'm going to go over more process and schedule if you'd like to go that route.
Yeah, I think I would. Do members of the commission have questions they'd like to ask now?
I have one. Jessica, this is Nick. Are there things that you guys had on, let's say, the white space ideas that didn't make it in here that would be helpful to sort of just share with us as other things to consider? Maybe you guys thought they were too much or not far enough. Just want to make sure we're getting the full range of ideas that we may not be seeing.
I think a lot of the ideas and things that we heard were captured in here. I think one thing for you all to think through as you're going through here is looking at the sustainability provisions. And Steve, feel free to jump in here too, but and how strict and strong you want to be on those sustainability provisions, because we put them in there as kind of a starting spot for you all to think through.
Great, thank you.
Jessica, I know we didn't have enough money to do this, and this may not necessarily be one of the strengths of your firm. But I would like to see a lot of this translated into a relational database that where people, for example, could just type in an address and see what it is they can, what's there at the address and what they can do at that address. the way in which you've organized this and put it together, does it lend itself to that kind of relational database?
I think because each character district is in kind of a neat set of tables, so you could click on a property and it could pull up the tables. And I know staff has been kind of working on some stuff too, that to make it easier to find what applies. But there are things to trying to think through, because that isn't something that we have typically done or something that's in our scope to do. But I think the way it's organized, and Bill jump in, but the way it's organized, I think would lend itself to that, because the character districts are within their tables. Most of the standards are there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I can expand on that a little bit, just for the purposes of, not jumping ahead, but for the purposes of the public, if they're concerned about, I live at 40 East Avenue, and what does this mean to me? For the purposes of rolling out the map, which we're going to show you next week, there is a map-based application where someone can enter in their address. Their existing zone will pop up. There'll be another tab there, which will tell them what their new zone is. And underneath that, there'll be a link to that specific article and specific section of the code for that district. And also below that will be a link to the use table. Longer term, what we're going to do, assuming it survives the capital budget process, is where we're talking with a general code who's already a vendor of the city, who has a new map-based product where they'll take our new zoning regulations and put that into their map-based format in a little smoother operation than what we have. So it'll be a little more user-friendly for the public going down the road.
Thank you, Steve. Other questions from commission members?
Anna has her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
Hi. Yeah.
Anna, you're a little soft. Can you turn up the volume?
Well, I need to put this thing down or else it doesn't work. I always forget.
That's
Can you hear me
perfect.
now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, if such a relational database gets built and has those features and things that Steve was talking about, if there's a way to also connect it to, what is it, GSI or whatever it is that shows the property information, property taxes, as much additional data as possible so that we can have a full picture of our housing and land use in Norwalk. And then my question was that I saw a section towards the end on workforce housing. My understanding was that workforce housing isn't quite the same as affordable housing, that it's a slightly higher level of AMI. And I was wondering, why there isn't a section on affordable housing or even supportive housing, or if that's possible or anything related to that.
So I guess I can field that one. So the current zoning regulations, any multifamily project has a set aside requirement. When you get above a certain number of units, you have to provide workforce units, and those are defined and were modeled off of Connecticut General Statute 8-30G. Our regulations actually have a little bit lower affordability standards than that, just based on the way we structured them. We are also just about to kick off. That's one of my tasks tomorrow, is to finalize the contract, is to conduct an affordable housing study. So that will look at other issues, probably beyond what might be under zoning in terms of affordable housing, and other programs and methodologies the city might undertake to look at that. So it's definitely getting viewed, and if that study reveals any proposed changes that should get incorporated to the zoning, we'll wrap that in at a later date.
Thank you, Steve.
Any other questions before we open it up to the public? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could take 10 minutes and then walk everybody through the website, that might
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I'll just need to thank you. So this is where you may have registered for the webinar if you're from the public. So this is the Planning and Zoning's main page. So if you are able to navigate to the City of Norwalk page, you just on this tab over here would click on City Government, Planning and Zoning's in the lower column down here. I've kind of taken that step already. Tomorrow, just so you're aware, I don't want anybody to be confused. This image is going away because this presentation will be over. What you'll see is this graphic here will replace this graphic here. So you would just simply click on that. And that takes you to this page, which gives a little bit of explanation as to what we're doing and why, which, this is a very brief summary of what Jessica laid out for you. And as you navigate down the page, what we've put together are some different information sheets for the public. I'm not going to go through all these, feel free to go through them, but some of them relate to, a little summary of why we're doing this, why we're using like a form-based code. And they're really meant to be high level kind of quick summaries. Like this one is on changes to the bulk and height standard, which would be your setbacks, your building height, your coverage, overall summary changes to the flood overlay zone, to the CAM zone. This is like a breakout sheet on sustainability. And this one is probably will get some interest because it deals with grading, drainage, and vegetation. Our current regulations don't speak to those standards at all. So that's a kind of a new section, which in my time here has been an issue where you have a property that develops next to you and they change the grade and now you're getting mud and silt running off on your property and water you didn't have before. So that's something we built into the regulations. The one I want to go through, and the chairman had talked to you about this a little bit. Is that visible or do you need me to blow that up a little?
You could blow it up just a bit.
How's that?
That's fine, Steve.
Okay, so what we've tried to do on this page is kind of outline the public input process. So there's a lot of different ways to participate. First and foremost, you can email myself or Brian Baker. And so both our emails are listed there. We've also put together this online form, which I'm going to click on in just a second. I don't want to click on it yet, but there's a form where you can provide input. I should say in full disclosure, this document's been scrubbed several times. I'm 100% certain you're going to find typos. Brian and I were going through things already and we're like, well, that one section doesn't quite line up how we thought it did with the other. So there are going to be errors in the document. So I don't want you to think that this is 100% set in stone, that everything is perfect. It's not. I should also apologize to the public and also the commission because it took several months longer than it should have. And that's, solely my responsibility. We did hire an outside peer review attorney to take second look at the document. We probably should have done that up front, but we didn't, and then ultimately decided to, which really in hindsight was a good move, which I wish we'd just done sooner. But just getting that out of the way, looking at where we are in terms of public outreach. So we're at April 4. We're doing the outlay of the regulations. We're doing the draft presentation April 12th. So hopefully you can all come back and get a preview of the zoning map. And the reason we don't do them on the same night is really to give you a week or so, just to kind of get used to the document a little bit, because it's, if anybody has looked at the old zoning, it's just numerous pages of text, and it's very convoluted and hard to really look at unless you're looking at something specific and have some familiarity with the document. So we're going to roll the map out next week and explain the changes with the map. We'll update this site to reflect and provide further guidance on the changes to the map. As the chairman indicated, and we should probably, before we let Jessica and Bill go for the night, decide on April 24 or 25. And as the chairman mentioned, that's going to be for the commission to hold a similar meeting to this, more of a Q&A style, where the commission's had about 4 weeks to look at the document and starts questioning things, and Bill wants to get further details on things. So we'll bring Jessica and Bill back again for round 2, as well as have our peer review attorney on with us to answer any questions that might come up, and the public is encouraged to listen in on that night. As the chairman indicated, what we're looking to do is the kind of the second phase of, public information is to hold a series of meetings within each council district. So Norwalk has 5 council districts. So we're going to coordinate, which we've already started to do with the council reps from each district. We'll pick a meeting hall or a meeting location within each district. Hopefully one that, first we have to find a date that works for the council and staff, and then have that public venue be available. We'll do that, looking to do that in like a 2-week time frame. Brian and myself will split up the duties, and we'll pick, like I said, we'll pick a location. There'll be an in-person meeting. If we get down the road and council members within a specific district want to have additional meetings, we'll come back and do it again, or we'll do it virtual, however everybody wants to do it. The third phase is more on a neighborhood schedule that we're going to look at. The POCD identifies 9 different neighborhood groups within the city. Unfortunately, there are a few neighborhood groups that don't have organized representation. So we'll work with council members on that to see what we want to do for additional meetings. And I know there are also smaller neighborhood groups that have popped up in recent years. And what we'll do with those groups is probably offer up, these are probably going to be daytime, because I'm not going to spend, 5 nights a week out doing this. We'll spend as many as we need to, but for smaller neighborhood groups, we'll probably look to do something during, normal business hours. And while all that's going on, the commission will be holding a series of meetings, and we haven't quite mapped out exactly when and what, but I think the content could range from, spending one night looking at single family zoning, another night looking at the commercial zoning, spending a night looking at grading, flood hazards, sustainability, et cetera, whatever topics the commission wants to go through. Those will obviously all be public meetings, and this will hopefully culminate with some sort of public hearing in the late May, June timeframe. And when I say that, those are not, at least in my mind, since we're behind schedule from where I thought we'd be, are probably not going to be adoption hearings. There'll be hearings for the public to come and make comments and provide additional feedback beyond what we've heard. And then, then we'll see where we're at in terms of, we're going to bump up against summer vacation. So we'll see where we're at. And, our kind of mindset with this is we're not under a strict timeline to get this done. We want to just give as much opportunity for everybody to provide comment as possible. And, the last thing I'll mention regarding this before I show you the public input form is, we also envision we'll be in front of all the, city regulatory bodies, that, and advisory commission. So I imagine we'll be at Common Council several times. Bike Walk has expressed interest in having us come talk. So is Harbor Management. So Brian and myself will be out, doing those meetings. And when we do those like neighborhood focus meetings, they'll be more focused on changes in those areas. And I guess before I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to show you the form people will be able to access. And this form you can use for comments no matter how small or how big. And Jessica and Bill, we did borrow all your graphics. Sorry about that. I didn't check with you first, but we did. So there's this form here. And it's kind of, we're trying to get a little information about you at the beginning. And then at the bottom, it, tries to hone in on what your comments are. And it's a simple form. So, and again, you have the option of emailing us with your comments or concerns, providing comments on this form, provide comments in person through the district meetings, provide further comment through neighborhood meetings, and ultimately provide additional comment at the, the public hearings, which are dates to be determined. So that's kind of a overview of the public outreach that we've kind of had planned to date. As we get through the council district meetings, then we'll start to work on scheduling those more neighborhood focus meetings, but it's a little difficult to do that until we get everything else scheduled. And I'll stop talking.
Okay, with that, I see that there are about 11 questions in the question and answer area. While we open this up to the public, can we have a staff member just look at those and see if responses are required, and if they are, at some point give the answers to the questions that people have raised.
Sure.
Brian, can you explain how people can ask their questions? And just before you do, let me remind you again, it's not a public hearing. We're looking for some quick questions that can be responded to, similar to what you've heard so far.
Sure. So for anyone from the public, if you have a quick comment, question that you'd like to ask either TPUDC, Jessica and Bill, our consultant, or staff, Steve and myself, you can hit the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. And if you're dialed in on a phone, you could hit *9. With that, I'll start bringing some folks over. Judith Harris.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I was typing it too. Will there be any kind of booklet we can pick up similar to the, that outlines all this in the way Jessica Wilson showed in her presentation? So that if we want to review the whole thing, we can, or we have to print out the pages ourselves? That's my question.
Brian, yeah, Brian, if you want to jump in on, I'll answer this one if you want to do the other ones list. But I was going to I'll just type in the responses for the other ones. So right now, what we put together were those kind of short sheets that kind of give the big picture overlay. Anything else beyond that, if like I said, the regulations are actually, they're live now. So they're actually on the website, so you can go look at them. Which, and ideally, we're trying to keep things out of print copy as much as possible, just to avoid printing a lot of documents, but that's where they are. So anything else, if you wanted a specific section, you would have to print that out.
And the regs are live on the city's page, Steve, or the Zone Norwalk page?
They're on the city page right now. They were at the bottom of the page that I showed you, so they are up.
Okay. All right, next is Lou Garcia.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a chance to actually look at the new regulations before I make more comments. One of the comments that I've being an architect and having done a lot of projects in Norwalk is that the recreation area, when it comes to multifamily, I think is a big item that should be looked at closely with the regulations, because right now, the way that they're written and the way that they've been placed in a couple of projects that we have gone through already in the city, is that the green spaces are going to be part of the setback requirements, and I think that's very unfair. One of the problems that I think happened is with the project over here on Winfield Street, which I was pretty much against because it was too dense and so forth, is that they have a requirement for the setback and for the building away from the neighbor, but that same setback is what's being used for recreation. So the issue there is that everybody who belongs to this condominium complex is supposedly going to go to this recreation area because we all like to have a place so we can go in the summer and maybe have some picnics, maybe throw a frisbee and so forth. And these people have nowhere to go except in the back of these units where they have this recreation area, which is also a setback. But I think that's going to be a real big problem, because I personally don't want to have a bunch of people behind my unit that I don't know, and they're going to have all the right to be there because it's a recreation green area. So it's a conflict. So I think that should be addressed in the new regulations.
Thank you.
Next, Donna Smirniotopoulos.
Hello, everyone. Donna Smirniotopoulos, Shorefront Park. I apologize if I missed this during the first part of the presentation. I was looking for where in the regulations the what we now call the Marina District is, because those of us who live in South Norwalk close to Water Street have been waiting to figure out what changes are upcoming for the Marina District. And so I think I missed that. I can't remember now. It all kind of just was a blur. And then let's see, phase 2, the council district meetings. Steve, did you say those were going to be daytime meetings, or is that some other meeting that you said would be daytime?
No, so the meetings with council will most likely be, I can almost say for certain there'll be evening meetings in like hopefully a central location, like a school within that council district. I know District C, we're looking at City Hall because it's kind of like a central point.
Right.
I think District A, I think we're going to do the library, and that's as far as we got for the 5 districts right now.
Okay, all right. And then in terms of feedback, do you have a plan now for how you intend to process feedback, whether it's coming from individual residents or neighborhood groups, regardless of whether it's a really big neighborhood group like ENNA or a little teeny tiny one? I mean, I'm just not really sure. I've participated in terms of giving feedback in the past, and I'm not really sure how all the recommendations are processed.
So for this piece, throughout the entire kind of outreach stage and public input stage, we're going to collect and collate all questions and comments. We're not going to tell the commission, hey, there's a typo on page 48. We're going to get them like where there's comments or concerns or questions by the articles, and then we'll group those together and pose them to the commission for consideration when they get to, I don't know if we'll do it before the initial public hearings or after that.
Okay, and then is there any status update on the Circa study? Because that was kind of a concurrent study that impacts the same area as the Marina District zoning. And so we had been asking back during that last Circa meeting about how these two things are going to work together. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, so we were actually just set a week for the meeting today. So that the second kind of committee meeting for the Circa study is going to be at the end of April. I don't have the exact date yet because we're circling back with all those members. So yeah, if anything, that study should be done probably before the final adoption of this. So I think we'll kind of, if there's any zoning recommendations that come out of that specifically, those will be considered as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I can answer the question on the Marine Commercial District. So that is one of the special districts in the zoning is the Marine Commercial. So it has its own set of tables with different metrics that were updated based on the waterfront study. I don't know if staff wants to add anything to that, but.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing, and it's a little teaser for next week with the map presentation, there are a little bit of unknowns with a few of the marine commercial properties on what the final zoning designation should be for that. So I think that decision will get finalized as part of the overall adoption process.
Next is Todd Bryant.
Good evening, everybody. So my question is about the online map, and I'm wondering if that will be combined with the existing city GIS map. I'm a big fan of those maps. I use them in various kinds of research around the state, and they're incredibly useful for the amount of information, assuming that the information is loaded into the map. They're incredibly useful to not only to me as a researcher, but I'm sure to developers, builders, homeowners, everybody else. So I'm just wondering if you're going to do two maps, or if you're going to merge them. I would suggest that you merge them.
So Sorry, Brian.
Oh, yeah, I figured if you were typing questions, I can, right now we are gonna have, next week when the map goes live is an online map where you can click on a property and you can see what your existing zoning is and then what your proposed zoning is going to be or could be. And then post adoption of any changes, that will all get uploaded into an online ArcGIS map. And we have our new staff person up in the GIS department is very enthusiastic, and she's been awesome at helping us out getting all of our GIS stuff on board. So yeah, essentially you'll be able to use the GIS online like you do today with any new changes.
Okay, so there will be one map that has all this information.
Yeah,
Right.
I should clarify one thing. We are hoping to have a new product that's GIS, it is GIS based. So hopefully the purpose of the map we're rolling out next week is just to, because I'm imagining a lot of people are home saying, I live here, I'm in this zone now. What does it mean to go into this new zone, and what are the changes? So we're trying to provide, if you click enter your address in on the new this GIS map, it's an online format. It's got, here's my existing zone, here's the new zone, here's a link that tells me exactly all the things I can do on my property, and here's a link to all the standards that affect my property. So I can build my building this big, here's all my setbacks, here's the type of buildings I can put on my property. So that's the intent of the map that will be live next week. Ultimately, that map will go away and this will get folded into a much better product that links to the tax assessor's data and all the other GIS data that's available. And ultimately, when we have some time, we'll have all the historic data that the city has for building permits and zoning permits linked to that. But that's a big project that costs a lot of money. And that's something it's on our radar. We want to do it. It's just a time crunch and money crunch that, it doesn't afford us the opportunity to do right now.
Right. Thanks. I understand. That's a noble ambition. And of course I'd like to see a historic layer too, but that's not what we're talking about here. But it's good to see, that it will end up being layers on a single map, because that saves people a lot of time looking around for one thing and another. So thank you.
And if there's anybody else, if you wanted to raise your hand, you could do so now. Otherwise, I guess Steve is plugging away at written questions.
Yeah, and a lot of these, Mr. Chairman, are a lot of more how to access this or access that. So, but there was one, a couple of people have asked about more detailed documents related to the differences between current regulations and the old regulations. And it's hard. I think when we do the map presentation next week and we have that guidance document up there, it might provide a little more clarity that if I'm in the AAA zone today and I transition to the zone to be named next week zone, what does that actually mean for me? And I think we'll have more guidance on that next week. So just be a little patient.
Okay. Diane CC.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I actually have 4 quick questions. I'll take them one at a time. I think a couple of them are just one-word answers. Can you tell us who the peer review attorney is that Steve Kleppen mentioned a few times?
That was Attorney Mark Brantz.
I'm sorry?
Attorney Mark Brantz.
Okay.
And I think he's with Halloran and Sage. I got to double check that, but I think that's the.
Okay, thanks for that. And then on the approval process, is the council committee that advances this, is it Economic and Development Committee, or what committee advances this to the council?
So this does not require any council approval. This is solely the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Oh, okay.
They're going to be briefed and incorporated into the process. We've already talked to them about that. But the approval itself is under the commission's jurisdiction.
Okay. And so do you know now if they're likely or not likely to have their own public hearing on this?
That would be entirely up to them. talked to Chairman Burnett as well as John Cuddies, who chairs the ECD committee. I said, you know, how many times you want me to come and chat, I'm happy to come and chat and present and answer questions, but that anything like that would be at their discretion.
Okay, all right, I'll follow up with them. And then and then two comments that were something I'd like to understand more. But we could do this at a later date. Is there a pretty big distinction where you have one of the community districts broken out for Rowayton at the waterfront? And I wonder why that's completely different than East Norwalk, which the bulk of fronts the waterfront, the river, the harbor, and Long Island Sound, actually. So I'd like to understand, not necessarily this second, but at some point, the logic behind that designation and how those codes reflect the future of Rowayton versus what's happening here in East Norwalk.
Yeah, that's a good question for next week.
Okay. And these documents are posted tonight, you said, Steve? When
Yeah,
we
so-
log off, they'll be there?
Yeah, so I mean, Jessica, one thing I think Alexis texted me, I think on your site, it still might be password protected,
Yeah.
which will get rectified. But on the P and Z page, you can view them now. So they're
Okay, then
live.
the follow-up to that then, is there still a Zone Norwalk page? And then the other one that was called tomorrow.norwalk? Because that's where we refer people all the time and it seems to be not updated and we're not
Yeah,
finding
so-
stuff there.
For the Zone Norwalk page, so we're gonna, as soon as this meeting is over, take that password off of there. And as soon as we get the YouTube video upload that. So right after this meeting, you'll be able to go to the Zone Norwalk public draft page and you'll have a link to the document and then a link back to the city's page as well for providing comments.
Okay, so folks can get to it either way. And then just a final comment too, because this is something that the community has been bouncing around for a while. Because we see that there's still designations throughout the districts, I think all of them, for special permits. And at some point, the discussion, I think, should be had because the community is interested in it and why we allow special permits at all. And it's kind of a simple question that we overlook, but I think that this is the time to have the discussion during this process. Thank you so much.
Okay, next, we have Bessie Kong.
I was just typing a response, so I'll hold off.
Hello, well, I wrote a question, but this is really a follow-on to a previous comment about what happens to comments once they're submitted. So can I recommend that those comments, once you've grouped them together, actually have responses in terms of outcomes, and that those are also posted somehow, whether it's after the commissioners meet or during some part of the public hearing process. It's just good to know what happens to the concerns that have been voiced.
Right, so we're going to catalog all written comments and do our best to capture everything we receive. If we can, when we have the council meetings, I'll see if we can do something to get those recorded. I'll have to work with IT on that, because if they're not always at City Hall, that I don't have IT control over some of those locations, but we'll do our best to record that. And then after that, capture the comments and feedback we get to give back to the commission. And like I said, indicated and listed kind of by the articles that are within the regulations.
Right, or if the comments themselves have been accepted or not, whether you're going to, I mean, if they represent any substantial changes to what already exists in the draft code, whether there might be changes to the code as a result of community participation. So, okay. Thank you.
Next, we have Catherine Knight.
Hi, thank you very much for this meeting, very informative. I have a question just in terms of looking forward for some of the climate change resiliency of the planning and zoning regulations. It's difficult to see what specifically is allocated for EV, especially for multifamily homes, you know, in line with kind of what's coming down the pipeline. It looks like in Connecticut for EV requirements or planning going forward in terms of fleet. So there's adequate charging network or facilities, especially for people who are renting or living in developments. I know that that's a challenge for people. And the second one is just the 1 foot over the base flood elevation when the state's looking at scenarios going forward for 2 feet of sea level rise, and how that plays in and how forward looking we are with some of what's happening with, you know, especially in the coastal zones for looking at floods, and even the way that the tides movements have changed over the last 10 years. You know, it's very common to see the 9 foot what used to be super tides are now more the norm at full moon, and causing flooding just in terms of some of the setbacks and how those have been thought out in the regulations. Thank you.
Yeah, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. So I think the state came out with some recent legislation for, I think it was multifamily developments over, I think if they required 20 or more parking spaces, or if it was 20 units or more, then 10% had to provide EV stations. So every municipality is mandated to require at least that. And I think there was a number for a commercial square footage as well. So that's factored into the regs. And then for the flood elevations, I believe last I checked, we were doing a 2 foot above BFE. So I think that's kind of where we've landed on those kind of ideas. Next, we have Richard Bonifant.
Thank you. You can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, we're asking questions and comments about what was skimmed across the surface. I mean, we couldn't delve into the details, but as the details become more out front in the community and online, and we can actually see this, because, you know, you just presented an overall view. When we actually see the details and people start commenting and people start pointing out things that might not be what the community wants, or what I'm asking is that when the public does comment, do you anticipate a lot of changes to this? I mean, is it going to be a somewhat of a rewrite or tweaking, or you know, I mean, okay, you basically put something out in front of us to start the comments, and we'll all get into our details when we actually see what's the specifics of this. But do you anticipate like a lot of work going forward to change things, or this is it, take it or leave it, or, you know? Thanks.
Richard, maybe I can answer that one. The commission is going into this with a completely open mind. We can't say what the final outcomes are going to be until we hear what people have to say. All we can tell you is that we're going to listen openly and honestly to what the public has to say before we get to a point where we're going to vote on this matter. How many changes we may adopt as a result of public input from attorneys, developers, as well as the public. Frankly, at this point, it's impossible for us to say.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Adam Blank.
Hi, thanks everybody. So my question or comment really is, you know, even on a simple application that comes before you, there's often many, many months of work that goes into getting that application ready and hopefully in compliance with the regulations. And I think with this massive of an undertaking on the rewrite, that it's possible that you'll have something that you're ready to approve in June. It's possible September. It's possible it'll be next year sometime. And I think it will be a challenge for anyone looking to come in front of you with an application to put an application together that both complies with the existing regulations and complies with the proposed regulations, because they're not sure which one they're going to actually have their application heard in front of. So my sort of suggestion is for you to consider setting early on in your timeline that you're not going to, whenever you pass, whatever gets passed, that the effective date for it will be a couple of months out from passage, so that people can plan on, will comply with the existing regulations. And then once you've got it passed, there's some time to then adopt to the new regs.
And then anyone else, please go ahead and use the raise your hand tool at the bottom of your screen, or if you're dialed in, you can hit *9. Larry Katz. Larry, you just have to unmute yourself. That should be in the bottom left corner of your screen.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, this is a question for Jessica. What towns in Connecticut have you done this for previously? Norwalk?
We're currently working in Manchester, Connecticut. Well, that's on their comp plan, but we've worked in New England a lot. So we've done quite a few zoning ordinances in the New England area. In Manchester, New Hampshire, we're working on their zoning. We've done Portchester. Trying to think of, and Bill's been with the firm a lot longer than I have, so I'm looking over to Bill to try and fill into what other cities in New England that we've.
And I think it's fair to say we've probably done more zoning code projects in New England than anywhere else in the country.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely true.
Another thing I'd like to bring out is that Norwalk happens to be unique in Fairfield County. We're surrounded by all these bedroom communities, and we in the past have encouraged businesses to come in, being a little bit more flexible to getting more businesses in here. Is the plan going to address that issue?
And I mean, the only way I know how to answer that is the regulations have a set of standards that are developer friendly. The first form-based codes were written for developers by their planning firms, and so there's definitely an even-handed approach to it, trying to balance the interests of the city and the citizens and the developers all at the same time.
And I think the most important part about the form-based code is it kind of sets an expectation for what buildings are supposed to look like, depending on what zone you're in. I think that's kind of important. It gives some predictability and expectations for the public to know what is going to come. I think when anyone drives down the post road, they kind of see, that's exactly what you don't want to see. So, when the form-based code comes in, it's kind of saying, this is what we want Route 1 to start looking like. Next, Jason Milligan.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have two quick questions. One was follow up on Adam. I didn't hear an answer to Adam Blank's question. I don't know if one was given or if it just noted. Was there an answer given to Adam?
No, there wasn't, but I think as we sort of get closer to the adoption part, that's, I think, when that discussion will start happening is
Oh,
what
but
this,
I wasn't,
effective date.
my question wasn't exactly. Right, so my question is, will there be a point in time where you could use both, right? I mean, right, you have your projects ready to go. If you don't get it approved in time or even in time, yeah, I guess some planning purposes for everybody, you know, what you're gonna be.
I think the real answer to that question is that in Article 1, which we call the housekeeping article, there are provisions in there for the transitional period between where somebody has filed an application under the old code, and if it's been filed and it's complete under the old code, it can go forward under the old code. If it's just something that somebody kind of threw at the wall to get it under the deadline, it's probably not going to be handled under the old code. It'll get handled under the new code. So that's it'd be very, very difficult to have two different sets of regulations that were applicable.
Yeah, but that answers my question. That makes sense. That's what they've done in the past.
Yeah.
There's a grace period basically that you don't get. It's not a hard stop. But so my other question was the form-based, the process of if you're as of right and you're complying completely with the regulations, over the counter type permits. Is there a certain level of those?
Steve, you want to address that maybe?
Sure. So within the regulations, and it's based on the zoning district, it's more clarified. Some of the zones right now that are existing zones have that broken down by the scale and scope of the project. If you're size X, you're over the counter, size Y, you might need site plan, and then size Z, you might need a special permit. But it's more clearly defined now what those different triggers are for those. And it also, again, it depends on the zone, because some zones are meant for more intense development than others.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
And we can do, I think, Brian, we have a way to capture and post the chat too, right?
Yeah, I can figure that out.
Good. I'm hoping better you than me.
And then if anyone else, I see Miss Cece has her hand back up before we open it back up to kind of second bites. If anyone else hasn't spoken yet and would like to speak, otherwise I'll let Diane come back on. Seeing no one.
Hi, Brian. Thanks. By the way, I can help you with that chat transcript thing. So if you want, it's kind of hard to find to be able to pull that down. My other question now is in regards to the questions from Attorney Blank and Mr. Milligan on the timing and the transition. And I'm going to put on my East Norwalk Neighborhood Association hat for a minute, because I don't want the record to be written now without us requesting it again, which we've done in the past. But especially now with these changes, I would like the commission to consider putting a moratorium on special permit applications until all of this is settled out, so that we don't kind of get a run on applications that might fit into the old code and be objectionable under all the, what I think were a lot of great fixes in there. And I also do want to say too, I didn't say it up front to the TPUDC, this is a great job with this draft. Tremendously different from what we've had to work with. And I think the visuals and the tables and the mapping and linking and everything will really make it easy for us mere mortals to better understand the code and what we're looking at. And thank you for that. So,
Thank you.
but I'm getting it on. Thanks, Jessica. But I'm getting it on the record. The association's asking again for a moratorium on special permits while these regulations are being considered. Thanks.
One of the big task we gave TPUDC was definitions. So we think they did a really good job with that.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of definitions in that section and hopefully a lot of graphics too. So hopefully that'll clear up a lot of things.
And then if anyone else has any questions that you'd like to ask tonight, otherwise, Steve pointed out that the page where you could submit questions and comments. We have the Zone Norwalk website that Jessica went over, which has various ways to submit comments. You can always email Steve or myself. My email is bbaker@norwalkct.gov, and then Steve's is skleppin, KLEPPIN, @norwalkct.gov. And we funnel all those questions to the commission and to Jessica and TPUDC. We have Tanner.
Go ahead, Tanner.
Hear me? Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Excellent. So hi, everybody. I wasn't able to join until just a few minutes ago, so I'm not going to take up time to ask questions that have already been answered. I'm going to read the stuff. I just wanted to say thanks for all the work that's gone into this. I look forward to reviewing it, and I look forward to the meeting that sounds like it's on the 12th, where we'll hear more information. So thanks again.
And then next is John Palladino.
Go ahead.
Can't hear you if you're speaking, John. It might be your microphone on your end. You might have to change the input. See if John can navigate his way to that. If anyone else would like to speak, please use raise your hand tool. John, if you have any issues, again, you could feel free to shoot Steve or myself an email, and we can, if we need to pass your comments on, we can do that. Otherwise, we can just directly answer your question.
All right, who's next?
We could do maybe a last call. If anyone else has a question, comment, concern, please raise your hand now. Hit *9 to raise your hand. John, you could also type a question into the Q&A at the bottom, and we can answer it that way. That works. That appears to be it, Mr. Schulman.
All right, then let's move on with the other items on our agenda. The next item is.
Thank you, Jessica.
I'm sorry.
Thank you all. We will see you again on the 24th or 25th.
Yeah. Oh, do we want to, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for cutting you off. Do we want to set a date now? I think everybody, if I recall correctly, everybody that replied was available both dates. I don't recall anybody saying one was out. So since we have everybody here, it might be good to just finalize that now.
I don't know how other people feel. I'm available both dates, but I guess I would prefer Tuesday rather than Monday. Is that all right with everyone?
Fine with me.
Okay.
25th it is.
Okay, good.
Right, we'll see you all on the 25th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move on with our agenda. The next item is review and action on applications 2023-14 LM Edwin Montoya, 136 Washington Street, live music request for existing restaurant Appetit Bistro. Who is going to make the presentation here?
So I'll handle that one. These are pretty straightforward that you guys see a lot. Whenever a restaurant wants to have live music, they need to submit a noise report or a sound report to you to show that it will comply with the noise ordinance. I know Mr. Schulman, you had a question on their permit status because it looks like they're a retail space, but they do have a permit to operate the restaurant out of that location. So they do have a valid zoning permit for the restaurant. So no issues really on our end for that.
It's a tiny little space.
But so
basically it's a grocery store.
Yes, but Mr. Mott, he has his permit to operate his restaurant. He submitted his noise report. It shows that it will comply with the noise ordinance. So we've kind of put together a quick resolution for you guys. The noise ordinance usually makes a couple little recommendations, such as making sure all windows and doors are closed, patching up any holes that were required to get punched through the ceiling as part of the noise study. So we included that as part of your resolution.
All right, why don't you bring that resolution up?
Here.
Make it just a little, that's perfect.
Does it matter the name of the restaurant? Because I think they just changed names.
Generally, no.
The address that
so-
matters most, right?
Yeah, usually,
Okay.
If they've submitted a noise report, we do not make it tenant specific. We have been making new restaurants that may have an older noise report, resubmit new ones just because the noise ordinance was recently up.
Comments from commission members regarding this?
And then since we were on the discussion of new regs, this is something that we flagged as something as being a little bit silly why it goes to you guys. So we've actually proposed to move this into a staff review, since it's sort of, we can make the determination if it complies with noise ordinance. Health department and police enforce it anyway. So it seems to kind of bog you guys down for little reason.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve. This is
Okay,
Darius.
Darius Williams has made a motion. Is there a second?
I can second that.
I'm sorry, was that you, Hector?
Yes.
Okay, Hector Patches has seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, this is not a hybrid meeting, so we could do this with a show of hands.
Should probably, Mr. Chairman, probably should seat Hector and Anna.
My apologies, that's quite right. We're short one member and we have one opening, so both Hector and Anna can be seated this evening for any actions. Thank you, Steve. All right, with a show of hands, all those in favor? Looks unanimous, so I won't ask if there's anyone opposed. Passes unanimously. The second item of business, 9-11 SPR, North Water LLC, 20 North Water Street, bond release request. Brian, do you want to fill us in on this one?
Sure. So as you can sort of tell by the date of when the application was made in 2011, it's been approved for quite some time. The project has been completed for quite some time. So as part of this approval, a bond was required for both soil and erosion controls, and then a maintenance bond. At this point, a CO has been issued for the property. We no longer need to hold on to their bonds, so they've requested their funds back, and we have no issue on our end releasing it.
Is there a reason it took 12 years?
No, you would be surprised on the date of some of the bonds that we still have in our database. 2011 by any stretch is not the oldest, so.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve return of the bond?
I can move to.
Okay, Hector has moved. Is there a second?
Mike here, I'll second.
Mike and Galen both seconded. Again, I think we can do this unless there's discussion with a show of hands. Is there any discussion? All right, if not, all those in favor? Again, unanimous. Return of the bond is approved. Comments of the director? Steve?
So if anybody, if you poke around on the website at all with the new page for stuff, you have questions or something doesn't work, or you have questions, just let me know. And I just want to thank Alexis Caracetti, who was on earlier, and I think popped off, that she was working frantically till about 4:30, getting some of the pages up and with me making final edits. So I want to just thank her for that.
Well, Steve, I'd like to thank you for the presentation, both yours and the one by the consultants. I think that they did an easy to understand presentation. I know that as a member of the commission, I certainly appreciate that, and I hope the public appreciated it as well. And we look forward to meeting on the 12th when we will be going over the map.
Yeah, we'll probably, if we don't do it on the 12th, we should shortly thereafter kind of come up with like a kind of schedule on the review items that you guys want to go over and when and how to incorporate those into the meetings. I had some ideas, but I have nothing firm set in stone. So whatever you guys would like to do is fine with me.
Okay, the 12th might be too soon. Might make more sense to have that conversation at the meeting on the 25th. But I'd suggest that as you're going through the documents, should any questions arise, just jot them down so they don't get lost.
Steve, can you see? Oh, sorry, Lou. I just had a quick question on that to Steve.
Sure.
Can you see total downloads or page views on the city website? Like, do you have access to see if people are hitting it often? Those new pages?
I would assume so, but let me ask, because I don't want, I would think we should be able to, but I don't want to say yes until I know.
IT should be able to pull that fairly easy.
I hope so.
Comments from commissioners? No, if not, I'll entertain a.
Wait.
Sorry, Anna, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I have a list of 4 comments / questions. I think it'll be short. The first one was, Steve, you mentioned earlier the affordable housing study that's about to start. Could you just tell us a little more about how long that's expected to take, when we're expected to see? Is this a public facing report that we'll get? When would we see it, et cetera?
Sure. Just to give a little background, because it's been a while. So the state amended, there was a provision in the statutes, and I forget which one it was. I don't know if it's 82J. That might be the wrong one. No, 830K. I'm going to get it wrong, but it's in the 830s. So basically it had required municipalities, and I think it came out in 2017, that they had to prepare an affordable housing plan. Right. They amended it a little over a year ago to say you have to have it done by June of 2022. And there was a mad dash all over the state for municipalities trying to comply. That led to a wide array of different kind of plans being done. Some municipalities, I would say they are in the minority, hired an outside firm to help them. They came up with a good product. Some did their own work, which resulted in not such a good product. Some partnered with their neighboring municipalities and worked through their council of governments. We initially were thinking we would partner with WestCog and adopt their plan for the region. We had concerns that it was not going to address the needs and issues we see in Norwalk. We did some work on our own and thought, there were certain aspects we could have done in-house, but at the end of the day, we were 2 things. One, with the outreach, and second, with the the real deep dive that's needed to get into some of the data that's out there that we wanted to bring somebody on. And while all that was occurring, the state put together a commission to look at land use practices within the state. And one of the committees that was formed was put together to evaluate the affordable housing plans and come up with model guidance on what to include in the affordable housing plan. So we got a little bit lucky on that front because that document just came out. Their draft came out about a month ago. So our consultant now has that, and we've wrapped that into our scope of work for this study. So there's kind of an outline of a committee that's going to be formed with representation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to look at this and evaluate the plan. So that we're hoping it's like a 10-month process. I've got to, like I said, I've got to get that contract finalized and reviewed by the law department tomorrow, and then back out to the consultant for their signature. So that will hopefully start sometime in April, and then it should be about a 10-month process from there.
Thank
Anna,
you. Yes?
You've expressed quite a bit of interest in this.
have.
Would you be interested in serving on that committee?
Possibly. I appreciate that. I'd have to see when the meetings are and how healthy my children are. They're not meeting expectations tonight, let's put it that way. But I am interested in this and interested in hearing more.
Have a conversation with Steve to get the information you feel you need, and then shoot me an email, and we'll see if we can work that out.
Okay, thank you. My next question was, when are the zoning citation meetings scheduled for, and how can we or the public view them in real time? I've been doing a fair amount of Googling to try to figure it out. Some folks had watched some older ones and had questions, and I wanted to sort of see the current ones for myself.
So they're not, unfortunately, they're not on a set schedule. I think they are mapped out into springtime though, because we're at kind of the whim of the citation hearing officer. So they're really as his schedule permits. We try to do one a month. It's just too much turnaround and paperwork to do more than that at this stage. But they all are posted to Zoom and up on the YouTube channel, except for the last hearing, because YouTube was interesting. YouTube wouldn't post the video because they said we provided too much personal content, because I guess somebody's email address was up there as well as their phone number and address. So I talked to staff about making sure that any documents that have those are, kind of cleaned up a little bit, but all the videos are up on the city's YouTube page.
Yeah, the past ones. But if I, or if a commissioner or anybody in the public wanted to watch one in real time, I mean, is that allowed? And if so, how would they be able to do that or know when it was happening or access it?
So the Zoom meetings are all available online. So on the city's kind of notice page, all the weekly meetings are there. So they're all posted. It's like I said, those meetings are they're not like they occur on Wednesday afternoons at 3, but it's not always the third Wednesday of the month at 3.
Okay.
I wish they were that
Wednesdays at
straightforward, kind of
3.
like your meetings, but they're just.
Yeah. But it's on the meeting notice page.
Yeah.
Okay. When I looked through it, I didn't see any recently. So thank you. I appreciate that. And then question number 3. I know I've talked to Brian a little bit. I run, I think all of us run probably Zoom meetings for our jobs. And I know when I run them, I always am able to enable the live transcription and also make it so that the audience can see the full audience count and not have to ask like how many people are in the Zoom, or are my neighbors here, are my neighbors not here? Could that be enabled for our meetings in general?
I'll defer to Brian. I mean, I have zero objection to it. That might be on my Zoom capabilities.
Yeah, as long as Larry and I,
in particular is an accessibility issue.
Yeah, I think as long as it's an option that I'm able to enable, yeah, we have no issues. It's usually just our meetings get set up and they just we just click go.
Yeah,
Yeah, so as long as
Yeah.
that's an option I can click on, yeah, absolutely.
okay, thanks. And the last question, promise, is I know you said that, I don't know, a certain number of people registered, they had to register and provide their email addresses. And we got like 130 people when I checked in, which is, I think is a great number of people, but doesn't really match the full number that had registered. The people that registered, are they going to get follow-up emails about this? Something saying, you know, the meeting video is posted, or thank you for attending. If you want to see further stuff, here's the website, so that they can continue to know about the regulation changes?
That, yeah, we can do that specifically. That's because that's a good idea, but we have been like, so anytime we've been doing any planning study now, or any kind of anything we required outreach, then we've gotten feedback on, we've been gathering email addresses. So when we're hosting an event of some, you know, public import, like we have a shred or something like that going on, we're collecting those emails and sending that information out. But we can get the email addresses from these attendees tonight, and then shoot them an email just as a reminder about next Wednesday's meeting, and then, you know, plug them into future ones as well.
Yeah, I assume that, you know, having them register for this one was for a purpose, and that might be a way to do that. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time.
Sure.
Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, if not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mike here, I make the motion.
Okay, Mike has made the motion. Darius has seconded. All those in favor with a show of hands? All right, we are adjourned. See you all next week.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Night.